Hi, I'm Berta Karapetian from School Product Yarn Shop in New York and the founder of Karabela Yarns. Today, I'm going to be doing the tutorial on Continental and English method of knittings. And I'll show you why it's important to do one or another and why people are struggling from one type of knitting to another, trying to do it, and why it's not so important to struggle and do a particular one. My theory is that everything is depending on your muscle memory. I always test my students on the muscle memory, and I make my decision to tell them what I think is the best for them. I always start teaching my students with English or American way. The cast on I always teach them is the same long tail cast on as in my previous video. So let's cast on 15 stitches, for example. So we're casting on, and the cast on, long tail cast on, is the same for Continental or American or English type of knitting. It really doesn't matter. I always use long tail cast on as it gives very, very nice and sturdy foundation. Okay, so we got 5, 10, exactly 15 stitches. So the first thing I'm showing to my student, and I really teach 200-300 students a year, I always tell them that the first stitch we're going to be learning is knit stitch. So from the front to the back, we go into the stitch crisscross and we hold it with our left hand. Then we take the yarn, we go counterclock and in between of the needles, and then holding it with a little tension. Then we have, and notice that, we have 2 helpers, and I always want people to use them. As you're holding your knitting on the right for the tension, you push, you use your first helper and you push the needle down, down, down until it scoops out the stitch. And then the second helper comes to the picture and pushes off the needle. In, around, between the needles, down, 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 up, and you got the stitch, and now our helper helps off the needle. Now watch this. Sometimes it is a little difficult to push the stitch off the needle, but see what I'm doing. I'm moving the whole thing a little bit, not too much, otherwise they're going to jump off the needle. I am helping myself, and then it's easy. In, around, counterclock, don't forget, down, scoop the stitch off the needle. And do quite a few of those. In, around, and down. Now, I want you to see if we can expedite that process a little bit. When you are used to this process, what I want you to do to try to wind the yarn around your finger, and then watch how much more, how quicker it is to operate that way. So on your finger, it's wound there, and you just go and keep going. But as I said, your memory may be not there yet at the time. If that's the case, don't push yourself and continue doing the very, very easy way and push it out. And when it gets to you learning it well, then you can help yourself with winding around your finger. Now, Watch this. We're up to the last stitch. And my students are usually confused at the beginning and they go, oh my God, so what do I do with the last stitch? And I always tell them, and they laugh. I usually saying that the last stitch has the same constitutional rights as all of them. So you do exactly the same thing with the last stitch as you did with all of them. So that's your last stitch. And after that, you change your hands. It was in your right hand, now it's in your left hand. And here is another confusion comes to the picture. You have this loop, which I call ugly loop. I gave it a name for people to remember. Why it's ugly loop? Because somehow the tension is looser at the end. So when you turn around, the new knitters are confused what to do with it. And here is what you never, 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 never should do. You don't pull it up trying to get rid of that stitch, because ugly stitch, because you immediately double the stitch. Okay, so your knitting is going to go that way if you do that. So leave it alone, and with your finger hold it. You also never go into that loop, because that also will double the stitch. So what you do is you hold it with your finger and you start knitting exactly as I showed you before. That ugly loop will disappear later. So don't worry, the first ugly loop will disappear and your knitting is going to be doing okay. Now, let's do few of the purl stitches. So when the knit stitch was going this way, the purl stitch, and of course when you do the knit stitch, the yarn is in the back. When you do the purl stitch, you transfer the yarn to the front. That's very important. And the needle comes from the back to the front. So the crisscross in the front. Then you take the yarn, you go around and through. In, around, and through. So you also helping yourself of the needle exactly the same way. If you need to, you move your knitting up, and if you need to, you help you with your finger. So you go in, around, and out. Now, again, when you are used to this process, you may want to make it quicker and faster. That's the goal of every knitter. Nobody wants to be slow in the knitting. They want to be fast. So watch this. That makes it faster when you wind it around your finger. So you go in and around. And the closer you are with that, the faster it is. But again, don't push yourself to this winding around the finger until you're completely good with your movement in the first place. So now I will show you the Continental, the most desirable type of knitting. Everybody wants to knit Continental. The Continental is faster, and Continental is a little bit more convenient as far as the time goes and the movements and everything. But again, do not push yourself to anything that your muscles are not ready for. When you are experienced a little bit with knitting and your muscles know how to move, you may try again to do the Continental. But if you are English knitter and happy with it, don't worry about it. Continental is just another type of knitting, but they produce the same result. Here is the Continental knitting, and I knit Continental. So the yarn goes over your finger, and I hold it between two fingers like a cigarette. And I do that because I need tension. Tension is, as I said before, is very, very important for the knitting. So my middle finger, however, is holding the stitch, because if nothing holds the stitch, the flexibility is more than I want that to be. So from the front, I am going into the stitch, catching the yarn and going through the stitch. In, catch, and out. In, catch, and out. So you can use any fingers that you want to help yourself. Some people supply the yarn over. That's possible. I don't need to because I catch it easily. But if you need to, please use any fingers to help you with that. So, in, catch, out. In, catch, out. And I also need the same helper of the needle, and I also move my knitting up if I need to do that to make the process easier. So catch, 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 and catch. Now we're turning around, and now is the purl stitch in Continental, which is a little bit more difficult because you need to practice. That's what my students always tell me, students, that it's more difficult. And I know that it's more difficult. And it's not as fast as the knit stitch in Continental. Watch this. We go from the back to the front, then we go up and down and through. So, in, up, and down. And I'm using the same exact finger that my yarn is on. So I go in, up, down, and through. In, up, down, and through. Some of my students at the beginning do this and through. That's possible. But I certainly encourage you to keep the yarn on your finger, because even though it's not that convenient at the beginning, but if you want to be Continental knitter, you have to operate with yarn on the finger, because this is quite slow. Watch this. You can do that and it's correct, but it's much slower. So we're holding. Some people like to do it twice. Please do, if that is easier for you. But you definitely up and down. That's the way we do. I want to do my way. We do the purl stitch in Continental knitting.